you doing, my friends? Well, it seems like a long time. I'm not tying my soul to the downward grind.
Hey, and welcome into Late Night Countdown, ranking the records. Tony talking trash about music. And I'm going to go now to one of my very favorite bands of the 80s. I'm going to do two bands from this area. Of course, I'm talking about the Minneapolis area, and I'm talking about rock music. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Hüsker and the Replacements. Tonight, I'm going to do Hüsker. I'm going to bring Jay back, and we're going to go through their Replacements. He's a little more familiar with that catalog. Hüsker, I probably like Hüsker a little bit better than Replacements. A little more of a fan. A lot more. Saw a few more shows of Hüsker than I did them. Hüsker formed in 1979. You really didn't hear a whole lot with them for a while. They ended up doing early on their very first release. Land Speed record was more or less a live record that they did on their own. They then ended up on their and that was on a thing called Reflex Records, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But that record really was nothing but an exercise in speed, and really was pretty poorly recorded for a first record. But there have been some changes with that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Of course, that's follow up with the studio record, Everything Falls Apart, which is really a lot different from Land Speed record, and we'll talk about how it's different. A lot more melodic, and so were the two singles they put out. The early single Statues, and what was the first one they put out? Statues was really one of the big ones that they put out. That was a big one. And In a Free Land was the other one, and they really kind of were different from the mashing hardcore that was basically trying to see how fast you could go, which was the original stuff on Land Speed record. In the band, when you're talking about fans of the band that I've known about a lot, you find people for some reason fraction into the two camps, where they're either Heart fans or they're Mold fans. Probably more Mold fans because Sugar and his solo stuff, and he wrote great stuff, and I love them both. But if I was going to say I had one, I'd definitely be in the Heart camp. I've got all Heart's solo stuff. I don't have much of Mold's solo stuff. I just like Grant's always been a little more melodic, and he's had his moments where he's been great. He's had his moments where he's been spotty, but I think Bob's kind of the same way. They really combined on a unique sound. Bob arrived in town going to college, from upstate New York, and really turned into the punk scene early. Turned into the guitar. They met around record stores, of course, which brings them dear and near to my heart. But there's something about their sounds. When you went to see them live, there was a even before the Shoegaze and Valentine and all these bands, they were one of the first, and Dinosaur, they were the first to really put up this big wall first that you had to penetrate to get through. And that especially was big with Bob's guitar sound. And Greg, too, is very underrated in how he played and as a member of the band. But the truth of it is the two writers were basically Bob and Grant. And there was a little kerfluffle later, when the singles came out, when they got signed to a major label, Candy Apple Gray, and got signed there, and they started to pick Grant's stuff, which was more poppy and not quite as heavy a lot of times. There was a little bit of a thing there, and then unfortunately the band died, after the still brilliant Warehouse record, I would say. But, when you look at that, the SST stuff, a lot of people consider to be the peak stuff. We'll go through that. But, I was lucky enough to run around with some people from Minneapolis and Washington, D.C. when I was in D.C. and had pretty close connections to the band and stuff. Got to hang around them a little bit. And really cool guys, really nice guys. I've got some autograph stuff. I'm not gonna show and tell on it, but I do have a nice autograph. I think it's Warehouse CD at the time. CDs were the big thing. But yeah, after the band died, then unfortunately, after the band went on, a couple times I think Hart and Mold got together again, but for the most part, it was Bob, Mold, Sugar, and Grant did his stuff with Nova Mob, and moved on to his solo projects, and Greg actually went into become a chef and own his restaurant, and still think he's doing business up there in Minneapolis. But what a band, man! What a sound! What a unique thing to bring together. It was very enlightening to a lot of people to think they could be as heavy as they could be as hardcore as they could, yet be so melodic and so poppy and so harmonically good. That's what made them different. They were tune masters. There was tunes hiding underneath those walls of reverb, walls of distortion, walls of every kind of effect you could have, built on effect you could have. Nevertheless, let's get to it here. They made 8 records in their short period of time. I'm going to count Metal Circus, the EP, in there. And so let's start off right away with that record that I was telling you about here. Uh, the earliest record that they made here, and I am going to pour this out of the box set. Why am I pouring this out of the box set? Because this is one record that if you get the original copy of this, the fidelity is unbelievably bad. The original Reflex record version of this, and I've got it back there on the shelf. If you play it side by side with this, and what do I mean by this? This is something you can still get, I think, for a reasonable price. Savage Young Do, okay, a box set put out by Numero, believe it or not, number 200, collecting early Hüsker Do stuff. And they give you Everything Falls Apart too, and an alternate looking cover, and I'll show you the other when we get to it in mine. But this is my number 8 land speed record, and if you're going to get this record, do yourself a favor and grab this box, because there's also a couple other records in here, Savage Young Do, that are worthwhile. You get a nice book. It's a beautiful, huge book. It's a beautiful thing. And in the typical Numero fashion, they're not charging enough to make a lot of money. What was the charge on this? $65. And I got 4 records, 180-gram records, and this huge, big, thick book. It's this big book going through beautiful box set. $65. Numero rules. Numero has been operating at cost or near the line for a long time. I have a big collection of their great stuff that they have from the soul music throughout the United States, all the little cities and stuff. They actually did something too. They actually released my friend's record, Mike Hounshaw, who I played in a band with later, 10 Below. They actually released his solo record, and it's evidently a fairly popular yacht rock record at the time, that before we did the 10 Below stuff when he and I were in the band together. Haven't seen him in a while. They're still making music and doing real well. I'm going to go now to number 7. It's the one that I do not have, Joe. Let's put it up right here. I do not have it on vinyl. I have it on CD over there. Metal Circus. Metal Circus is a record that really, when it gets down to it, probably was the first jump towards some kind of commercial breakthrough. I mean, it's the song Diane was a song that was played, and really is kind of a strange, a kind of a strange type of a record. Because you still got aspects of the punk thing happening here. You've got it's not funny anymore. Hard, kind of talking about punk rock and kind of moving out of that. But Diane, Lifeline, First and the Last Calls, kind of fast, Real World, Deadly Skies. There's some aggressiveness in it, obviously. But Diane is one of those where he's kind of doing the motoring beat to it, riding it. And it's about this tragic story about this murder of this girl near Minneapolis. And it's just an odd thing to do. This was kind of the beginning of it here. It's the first really indication where they came through and where you could really see the good songs. And this is where I think, for a punk band, when people heard the tunes on this, they're like, wow, these guys are not singing about kill everybody. No. They were way beyond. And so that was 1983, October 1983, the record Metal Circus. Now, the one that I'm going to put now at number 6 will be a very melodic record, and that is recorded in 1982, recorded and released in 1982, the end. the fantastic Everything Falls Apart. I think this is eons better than Land Speed Record, although the new Land Speed Record is a different record completely. I've grown to appreciate it, and maybe it would climb out of the bottom if I would have been there at the time, but I was not attending shows. I don't think in that time they were playing in DC anyway. But you got the Humperdew Boys Choir on here, Robin Mugger and Marilyn, From the Gut. I mean, this is tight. Punch Drunk, Bricklayer, Sunshine Superman, the Donovan cover here on this, which is really nice. If I listened to everything you say, everything would fall apart. What's a great song? Wheels, Target, Obnoxious, yeah. Hardcore, a little more hardcore than Metal Circus that I was saying. A lot longer, but man, crusher, dude. From here on in, I don't know what to tell you not to get. Everything falls apart. Fabulous. Let's go to number 5, Joe. Another one I do not have on vinyl anymore. Candy Apple Gray. Candy Apple Gray is a very different record. When Candy Apple Gray came out, Candy Apple Gray was the first record that they put out for a major label. So it was going to, obviously, they were one of the first to sign to it. It was seen with a lot of scrutiny. Here's what the weird thing about Candy Apple Gray was. Bob Mould, I remember talking a lot in the interviews, hey, we rate these songs on acoustic guitars. There was a lot of acoustic music in this, and it, as a result, taking the heaviness out or taking that shield of fuzz that they put over everything, it's still here on some of the songs. I mean, you've got Bob Mould's Crystal. I don't know for sure. Too Far Down, Hardly Getting Over It was the acoustic song. Too Far Down was an acoustic song. So you've got the end of side 1, the beginning of side 2, 10.5 minutes of acoustic strumming, which was unusual. Thus, as I alluded to earlier, a problem came. They got signed to Warner Brothers, and all of a sudden, Bob sees Grant as the favorite son of Warner Brothers record, because the first 2 singles that are put out is Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely and Sorry Somehow, which were probably the most melodic songs on the record. Just kind of the way that it worked out. And I should have gotten the re-release on Record Store Day in 2014. I'm gonna go out and get another copy of it. But I'm glad that we do these things, because it reminds me what I didn't have. It's incredible. I can't believe that I didn't have it all this time. But I love Eiffel Tower High. It's great, man. They talk about junior mints and stuff. Just emotionally, junior mints. Oh, you don't want to hear another song where they talk about that. She walked into the movie and she's been there ever since. So Crystal's great. Dead Set on Destruction is one of my favorite. Well, I'm standing in the queue, and I can't stand anymore missing you. That has just got a relentless, beautiful thing to it. I think it's great. So yeah, and I don't know for sure. It's kind of a funny song, It just kind of sounds confusion. But anyway, good record, number 5. The Warner Brother records are always difficult for me to deal with, and so we'll transition into the second of the Warner Brothers records. What is that? That is the wonderful version here, and I have an autograph version here. So yeah, this is it. You can see the autographs here on the right side. Autograph version of the last studio album they ever made. Very psychedelically designed. And Grant does all the design here, and this is just absolutely incredible. I mean, I wish he could design my stuff now. My God, it's beautiful. This is one where I must admit, in this time as a Grant Hart fan, that Bob probably overcame Grant, and I don't know if and I think it figured into it. I think there was a little disappointment in Grant that was, Bob's got attitude from that, but it started. These important years is great. Charity Chastity. Great song by Grant, Standing in the Rain. They're kind of going back and forth, back from somewhere not so great, Ice Cold Ice. Pretty hot song. You're a Soldier, not so good. Could You Be the One is a hit. Too Much Spice, another Grant one, which is not that great. Friends, You've Got to Fall, one of the best ones on here. Visionaries, one of his, but then one of Grant's, Tour de Forces, She Floated Away. I used to play that. When I played a few years ago out, that was one of the covers that we did. It was a lot of fun. You could just barrel out with the grandmother's hand and then go on. Had a lot of fun. I just loved the power chords on it. Bed of Nails was one of Grant's songs, or I think it was, or maybe it was Bob's. I don't know. Tell You Why Tomorrow. Yeah, neither of those are that great. This is a really record who could have been a single. It's Not Peculiar's okay. Actual Condition okay. Those are reservations. Now She's a Woman, he's a man is great. Up in the Air is pretty great. She Can Live at Home. So I can really look at this record and fold it into one really killer record. And that's probably what they should have done with this. And then soon thereafter, you've got the Living End, you've got the tour that goes out on. Then they come back in the summertime for the tour, and I'm not going to break any confidences there, but I was around him at that time, and things were not working out very well. Things seemed to be kind of at loose ends, and I just think that the death of their manager, really in the long term, had an emotional effect, a delayed emotional effect on them, but. Nevertheless, that's my number 4, Warehouse. I'd do that with 4 stars. Candy Apple Gray, 3.5. Everything Falls Apart, 3. Metal Circus, 2.5. And Land Speed Record is about 2 now with the increase one. But I'd actually put it up almost as a 3 with the increase. But let's get now to the big 3. And the big 3, of course, are all going to be on that wonderful label from the West Coast that never paid anybody. Greg Ginn's SST, New Day Rising, and you imagine the amount of records that they've sold with this. New Day Rising, The Girl Who Lives on Heaven Hill. I know the story about that. I apologize, Folklore, if I tell you Celebrated Summer, which is one of the classics, which is a really great version on that live record, man. They sound really... It's great that Grant sings the melody high and then Bob kind of does something different. It's interesting the way that it moved. But Terms of Psychic Warfare, of course, that dun 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 dun. Power Line, Books About UFOs, the piano, dun dun dun, and honky tonk piano like Grand Plan. That's kind of sitting there, dun 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 dun. I just love How to Skin a Cat, What You Drinking, Back to the Hardcore, which is pretty cool, and then Plans I Make, which goes on. So this, in a way, of the records, there's a reason why this is the third of the 3 that are there. This also, they said they had the lyric sheet. I didn't even realize it. Didn't remember that there was one, but it's not a lyric sheet. It's an inner sleeve. But nevertheless, this is what it looks like. New Day Rising really is the song itself was. I remember seeing them live a couple of times. I remember on that last tour they came back after Warehouse. That was the opening song, and they were just. Grant was just pounding. New Day Rising. They seemed to just be content with playing the old stuff the last time, and that's how you could tell something was wrong, because the times you'd seen them before, they were always on to the next record or even the next one. There was one time I saw them where they were like playing stuff from Candy Apple Gray, I think, and Flip Your Wig wasn't even out yet. That's the way they were. They just continually rehearsed material, and so we're talking about Flip Your Wig. Let's talk Flip Your Wig, and some people think it's the best one of all. I understand you. If you're talking about the what, I don't agree. I think this is probably the second one. Miss Fantastic makes no sense at all. Flip Your Wig, Hate Paper Doll, Green Eyes, dun 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 dun, Divide and Conquer, and one of the most underrated, underranked Hüsker Du songs of all, the closer on the side one, Games. Oh my God, I love that song. That's a song that you could play as a rock band. I just think the chords are beautiful. I think the melody's beautiful. It sounds like it could have been done by any other band. I could stay here the rest of my life. Yeah, I could just fade away in a game. Oh, I love that song. Find Me's great. Flexible Flyer's great. Private Plane's great. Keep Hanging On is one of Grant's, another one of Grant's emotional songs. Only angels have wings, girl. I just think it's beautiful. Wit to Wisdom, a little more of the instrumental putter out there at the end. Don't know yet. Yeah, this is really the essence of it. If you're really talking about if you went to see them at what would be known the peak time, I think you'd probably best capture it on this or New Day Rising is maybe a little harsh. This is my God, Green Eyes, Hate Paper Doll. Love it, man. Love it. Flip Your Wig, absolutely one of the best, and one that anybody should have that's into Hüsker Du. I'd give it 4.5 stars for the general public, but if you're into the band, man, this is close to the peak. And that leaves us with number one, the conceptual record, the record that was allegedly recorded in a short period of time, perhaps under the influence of something we heard. Nevertheless, we spotted the controls, the legendary, fantastic, psychedelic, take your breath away, paranoid, up, down. Is that arcade, man? There's nothing like it. This came out in a year where, Double Nickels on the Dime also came out. And this year, we'll talk about that later. But something I learned today, never talking to you again. Well, I packed up my belongings, nylon carry-all. Charter trips, my God. And in the beginning of Dreams Reoccurring, Harry Krishna, Indecision Time. Just the perfect sprinkling in of the energy. Oh, I love it. Beyond the Threshold, Pride. I'll never forget you. The Biggest Lie. Oh my God, that is the beginning of side two is the hardcore. Like talk about energy. Oh my God. And then What's Going On? I was talking when I should have been listening. I didn't hear a word that anybody said. What's going on? What's going on inside my head? Another fabulous grand song. Standing by the Sea, The Biggest Lie. Somewhere Pink Turns to Blue. How about that one as far as a grand song? You talk about, you got Street Hassle, you got all these songs where people die. Well, there's one. You Die Into, he happens to do a couple of those songs close to that. Newest Industry's great. Whatever's great. Tooth Fairy and the Princess, fantastic. And then Turn on the News, and then Reoccurring Dreams to take it out. You got all the stuff here. You got all the words inside. It's just of a certain time and of a certain thing that was happening, and there's just nothing like it, man. I mean, it's one of the seminal records of hardcore, one of the seminal records of punk rock, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to label things and things. There's a lot of hardcore on this, but there's a lot of melodic, beautiful music, and then you've got the Tooth Fairy and the Princess. Don't wake up, don't skid up. The beautiful thing of that, you've got that beauty, you've got Hare Krishna, you've got Pride, you've got Standing by the Sea. You've got that veil of distortion is starting at this point to be depressed a little bit. And you find as they move forward from here, less and less of it comes in until it's hardly at all in some of the places in Candy Apple Gray, some of the acoustic songs we talked about later. But there's albums like New Day Rising where it's like on the distortion is on like 25. I mean, it's so fried out, and a lot of it is a production, a lot of it is a different things. But hey, to me, this is the Minneapolis band. Hüsker Dü was the Minneapolis band. They were the great Minneapolis band. The Replacements are a great Minneapolis band too. It's a completely different thing. I would say the Replacements were a little less hardcore than Hüsker Dü is, and that's not why I like Hüsker Dü better. I just was attracted more to their melodic writing. I was attracted to the melodies of both Bob Mould and Grant Hart, and the ability to get heavy and to get quick and to have some speed and still not lose that. To me, is something that's taken on by different bands to a different degree. But I think Hüsker Dü in that way occupied their own space. You had some that were melodic. Dinosaur tried to be melodic in a certain way. Mudhoney tried to be melodic. You had certain bands try to fill in that same area of distorted but melodic. But these were the first dudes, man. And I will forever miss Grant Hart. Grant Hart is a great rock guy, and I forever look forward to seeing what Bob Mould does. And Bob is a great guy in the different realms of music that he's done. I mean, he's tried to do some more of the Hüsker Dü stuff that sounded like it, which I didn't like as much as I like some of the other experimental stuff that he did. But he's done some stuff that actually is DJing and stuff. And of course, as we said, Greg is up making food for folks in Minneapolis. He may be playing some, but R.I.P. Grant Hart, man, and R.I.P. this great band. It's probably my favorite rock band to see live of the 80s. These guys were, and I'm not just confining it to punk, but I would just say rock in general, man. These guys kick some freaking ass live. And it's a shame that even the videos I see now don't really convey the enveloping that happens. You ask anybody that was there, it was a sound that like enveloped like a fungus all around the whole room, man. I saw him 5 times, and wow. Last 2 times we were in an auditorium, but no, that last time. The next to last time was in an auditorium when they did the warehouse, played the whole thing through. I'd seen a couple times before then, and then we saw the last tour in '87 when they were coming through. It's just a shame that that's how it ended. But nevertheless, one of the great bands of the '80s, folks, Hüsker Du. You guys like heavy, pick this up. And we will be back at you soon with some different stuff. We're going to get this again. I said I'm going to get Jay and get the replacements, and Dino and I are going to continue on our little endeavors, and we're going to work our way through some other cool stuff. Thank you, and we'll see you guys next time. Please remember to subscribe. Leave your list below. And everybody has a different era of Hüsker Du. I guess a lot of it's what they're more into. Some of the people like the heavier stuff better. This is heavy stuff to me. This is kind of the perfect spot. But nevertheless, good to talk to you again tonight. Please leave your list and leave your thoughts below. We appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe. And we will check you next time. Thanks, man.